Welcome back. We're looking at a 2000 Buick LeSabre today. A friend of mine, a little over 200,000 miles on it. Took it for a test drive. A really bad clunking sound when you step on the brake. Seemed to think it was the ball joint. I took a real quick look at it and determined that yeah, the ball joint's pretty worn at 200,000 miles, but the real issue with this was control arm bushings. There's a couple things about this. I just have a new one here. This is a new control arm. You can see this ball joint are riveted in here. In order to replace the ball joint, you can get the ball joint for these. You'd have to actually chisel these heads off or drill them out and punch them out, put the new ball joint in there. And even then, there's a good chance if you have a lot of miles in your car, your bushings, your control arm bushings are going to be bad anyway. The difference in cost for this particular vehicle is only about $20 more for the entire assembly. If you had to pay somebody to do that ball joint, the additional labor to get that out and put the new one in, it's going to more than offset the $20. I would recommend just buying the whole control arm and putting the control arm in. It's easier to do, and it's actually probably going to save you a little bit of money. So I'm going to show you. I have one of these done already, so that's what one of the bushings. That's the that's the front bushing, and you can see it's solid, and the bushing is good. And I'm going to show you the old one and what the old one looks like. And here's the old one I've already taken out. You can see. I don't know how well you can see it because I can't see, but this is completely. I can look right through it, all the way through that bushing to the back, and this is just completely destroyed. There's nothing left of this. So this is what's making all the noise. And this is actually the quiet one on this car. The noise is coming primarily off the driver's side, and this is off of the passenger side. So we're going to replace these. So you can see I've taken the wheel off already on this side, because obviously you're going to have to take the wheel off to get at this. I'm going to take the caliper and the rotor off. You probably could do this without doing that, but it makes it a lot easier to get at things. Just a point of safety here. If you look under there, you can see I have a jack stand under there. Don't trust your floor jack and get underneath this car or any car with just a floor jack. You're just asking for trouble. And people, unfortunately, are killed all too frequently by not doing that. Make sure you support the car safely on jack stands if you're doing this. If you don't have a lift, which I don't. The first thing we're going to do is just take this caliper off. And there's two bolts, one up here on the top and one down near the bottom. We're going to undo them and take this whole caliper and this rotor off. First I'm going to just put a lug nut back on this to hold the rotor in place. It just makes it easier to get this off so it doesn't move around. You can see these can be really tight. Actually, these two bolts are supposed to be 138 foot-pounds, which is really tight. So we're going to get a breaker bar, break them loose. You can't really get a gun on them. Just break them out of there. So. Now I've got them loose. A lot of times it's just the rust on the edge that holds them on there. Keeps it a little tough to get off. Just pop that right off of there. Basically tie that up in the top. Now I can take this rotor off and get it out of the way. just tie this up because I don't want to hang it on the brake line over here, the flexible line. Shouldn't let them hang on that line, so. Okay, so the next thing we have to do after getting that rotor off is back in here. You can see it right there, is the end link that connects the sway board to the control arm. That has to be undone in order to remove the control arm, so we're going to take that off. That's a 13mm bolt on the bottom of that. Alright, my guess is you didn't get to see very much of that, but fortunately, the head needed to be where the camera needed to be as well, if we can see any of that, so this is not cooperating right now. So, we're going to jack the arm up a little bit, control arm a little bit. We'll jack it up just a little bit, see if we can get it loose. Jammed up a little bit there, corroded more than anything. There it is. You can see the corrosion on it. It's fine. They just get corroded inside. So we've taken off the end link between the control arm and the sway bar. That has to come out. Obviously it connects the two. We're going to take that control arm off, so that had to come out. We took it out. It's a 13mm bolt. You just unscrew it, take it apart. We'll put it back in when we're done. Ball joint's in behind here. It's kind of tough to see, but in here, in behind this, right in there, is the ball joint. We're going to take that nut off. And then we're going to, we got a cotter pin to take out first. Take that nut off, and then we're going to have to separate the control arm from the steering knuckle, which we have a tool for. So that's next. There it is. A little hard to show you that. So, just a note. You have the axle coming out and this controller, I can't even speak. You have the axle coming out, control arms underneath. This ball joint faces up with the nut on top. You cannot get a box end wrench like that around the nut. Why they do this is beyond me, but if you do that, when you're putting it back together, when it gets tight, you're not going to be able to get the wrench out, so you have to use the open end to do these. So I've loosened that enough. There's about a 1/4 inch gap between the control arm and the actual nut that holds it onto the control arm. I don't want to take that nut all the way off yet because I'm going to drive this ball joint out of its seat, and I don't want the control arm flying down when I do that. So you leave the nut on the bolt a little bit and it'll hold it in place, but allow you to break it loose to get it undone. So just you can get these at any auto parts store. You can get a loaner. It's just a ball joint separator. You can use a tie rod end sometimes. Ball joints primarily. We're just going to slide it in there between the boot and the steering knuckle. Now, if I was going to keep this ball joint, I was just taking this apart, I probably would not do this, because it has a tendency to damage the boot, but since this whole arm's coming out, there's a new ball joint, I don't really care. So we'll just drive it in there. You can see the arm movement's loose now, so that's all it was needed to break that loose. So got it loose. Now we'll finish taking that nut off. separate it. There's the nut off the top of the ball joint. And you can see this arm is now pretty loose. And it's separated. So we're going to work next on back in here. See if I can sneak my hand back in here. The bolt for the rear bushing. And way up in here is the bolt for the front of the control arm bushing. So we're going to take them off next. About 21 millimeter, like I said. Hold it on this side with an 18. It's pretty tight. It's supposed to be pretty tight, and it is pretty tight. Alright, so that's broken loose. I should be able to get that off of there now. 21 millimeter. Okay, you don't have to take this inner shield off. It's just, I'm just doing it to allow you to see a little better what's going on. You can do it. If I was doing this for time, I wouldn't bother with this. But not when I'm doing this, so I'm gonna pull it off of here. Camera over while I'm doing it too. Maybe. It's always a possibility. And this one. There you can kind of see it a lot better. Here's the front bushing and the bolt that goes through. And you can see you don't have a lot of room here. I was trying to get that back bolt out so I could show you how I did the other side. You get this back bolt back here and you get it out. You can actually, this is loose now, this control arm is loose. You can actually turn it because this bushing is, they're so beat up that you can get a better shot at that. But I'm going to actually put a wrench on this side and gun it and try to put a gun on this side and break it loose. I hope, because I can't get a socket on this. Otherwise I can try a socket. As you can see, these heads on these are a little beat up anyway. I don't know if somebody's had them off of here before. I don't know if this control arm's been replaced at some point. It's very possible. It's got 200,000 miles on it, so we're going to pull that one off. Just going to wiggle that up. Hopefully we'll get lucky, but rarely do. That's nice. Socket back off of that. Another thing to note is the bolts for the front and back are not the same length. So front's longer, back shorter, kind of the opposite of a mullet. I gotta get these bolts out. So, should be able to move this arm around. Hopefully get these bolts out pretty easily now. Get past this plastic cover, which is in the way, but it's coming in, so. There you go, there's the front bolt. It's the longer one. I can tell you, it's being a little difficult. There's the arm. Get the arm loose, there we go. And there you go. So here's that old arm, and you can see, this is completely, you can see right through it, right through that. It's supposed to be solid, completely destroyed. Same as the other side. This one's actually a little worse. Yeah, it's a lot worse. I'm surprised. This car really is not safe to drive, like in the shape these bushings are in. They're really beat up, so it's a good thing I did it before something bad happened. Okay. So we're going to put the new arm in here. We're going to put it in loose. Bolted where it bolted to the frame, the subframe. Punch. What do you do with a punch? do a little better with this. A little more concentrated. Not need much, but I need enough to get it in there. So we fired that up big time, and it just bent the crap out of it. Oh man, this is supposed to be flat. So this in here, just weld this, ran into something. Whew. That is pretty brutal. Not the way it's supposed to be, that's for sure. Find the cars. Those are not the way they're supposed to be. Alright, we're going to see if we can line this. I still don't know if I have enough in there to get it down where it's supposed to be. Maybe. Maybe I got enough. Let's see in a second here. I hope so. That's off just enough to be a little bit difficult, so I'm going to try to line this back one up, which I think we can do. Come on, right there. Difficulty in lining it up because it's bent. You'll get it very close, but doesn't have to be off by much to cause issues. There it goes. Alright, let's see if we can line that up now. This is probably why I had a little more difficulty taking this side off because it was torqued a little bit from this being bent, from that front one being bent, but now it's much better. Just pull that one in place. Still have to get this one through. This is going to be not a lot of fun, I will say that, because it's bent. Figure out how I can get this lined up. I don't know. That's not it for sure. Tap that back in. There we go. Alright, you can see how much fun these can be sometimes. That was hit. I don't know what they hit. They hit a curb, hit something. Bent it just enough. I had to move it back as best I could. Bent it just enough to actually make it a little tough to get the arm in and out of there, but it's in there, so that's a good thing. Like I said before, I'm not going to tighten these all the way. I'm just going to snug them up. The weight of the car has to be on these arms before they get tightened up. So we're just going to run it down a little bit, get them in close. You might be able to see it better on this side. just going to run it in so it's close, but not tighten it up. Extension. Those aren't tight yet, they're just in there to hold it in place. What I'm going to do now, so now I'm going to put a little pressure on with a jack underneath this arm, make sure the knuckle and the control arm are where they should be, and I'm going to tighten that ball joint. This ball joint should be about 50 pounds. They're not that tight. Unfortunately, by design, there's no way you get a torque wrench on these, so you have to go by feel. What I'm doing now, I've got right about where it should be, and I'm just lining up the hole for the cotter pin to slot the capsule nut. That's about it. So cotter pin, always got to have these. Slide that in there and bend over so it can't come in. I'm just going to bend over two ends of this cotter pin and kind of wrap it around the nut so it can't come loose. Alright, so now, as I said earlier, I'm going to jack this up, this control arm, underneath the control arm, up until it picks off of that jack so the weight of the car is sitting on the control arm, and then I can tighten those bushings. Okay, so all the weight of the side of the car is sitting on this jack right now. It's just off of that stand. I'm going to looks like it's right. I'm now going to tighten the control arm bushing bolts to 117 foot-pounds. Foot-pounds. Knuckle buster, but you heard a click before I slipped off of it. That is 117 foot-pounds. All right, now I can't get a good shot at this with a straight socket on this side. So back in here, see if I can give you a better shot of that. Not really, but that sounds good, you know. I'm losing my battery here on my light. We'll make it work somehow. All right, back there. So I can't get a good shot of the front bolt with a straight socket, so, or the head of the bolt with a straight socket, so I gotta use a wobble socket and just kind of try to keep it as straight as I can to get a torque reading off of it. There it goes. Hear a click like that. That's 117. Just get the edge off it. So that was fun. But that's torqued down. One on the back here is torqued down, ready to go. It's hard to see that, but right there. Now we're going to grease the fitting on that ball joint. Grease it. So there is a boot on that ball joint. You want to swell that boot, but you don't want the grease coming out all over the place. You just want to kind of fill it up. Swell the boot up for it. That should be enough. Good. I'll grease that tie rod in too, since I'm in here. I'll give you a little better shot of how that works. I'm not going to put too much in here, that's dry rotted, but you can see that boot swell a little bit as I do it. That's kind of all you want. Just get some grease in there, keep it greased. So that should be the hard part of this. The hard part. It's not that hard, it just takes a little bit of time. Obviously air tools make it easier. You don't have to have air tools to do this, this takes longer. But it's doable. You do need to have some tools. If you don't have a torque wrench, you might be able to get these as a loaner from an auto parts store, or get one. If you're going to do any kind of work in more than one thing, you'll use it. It'll definitely be used. What I will tell you is when you have these, don't leave them torqued. So when you're done with them, take the torque off of them. Take them back down to 0. It's not good for them. They have to be calibrated. So just take it back down to 0 and leave it. Don't leave it under tension. All right, so I'm going to let this back on the jack. I'm going to put the rotor and the caliper back on here. Put the wheel back on, and we'll take it out for a test drive. And we'll see how it does. And you can see something right here. If you look at that right there, this is a Zerk that's not in great shape. It's oozing out the top a little bit. That's because there's probably some dirt in the actual valve, little ball valve that's in there. It'll probably stop, but it won't. Not a lot of it'll come out. But I think it's probably got 200,000 miles on it, or close to it. I don't think it's been replaced. I doubt it. And I'll have to talk to him, to the owner of this car, and we may have to do this one. You can see the grease from before where it's splitting. The boot has dry rot and it's starting to come out. So this isn't causing a problem yet, but it will eventually. It'll get worn in there and start to be sloppy. So I'll talk to him about that. Maybe we'll replace that. Maybe that'll be another video. What we still have left to do, I'm going to let this arm down, is to put that sway bar end link back in, right down in there. We're going to do that, and then, like I said, rotor, caliper, wheel, we should be done. All right, back up, ready to go. Just want to do a close out to the 2000 Buick LeSabre Control Arm video. I didn't realize at the time that the battery on the camera had run out right towards the end of the video. You didn't get to see me put the rotor and the caliper and the wheel back on, but obviously we did that, test drove it. The car runs rides much better, like it should. I didn't know if you could tell from the video, but the front mount for the control arm where it mounts to the frame had been hit, either a curb or something, and bent enough that it was tough to get the arm in and out. So at one point in the video you see me hitting it with a hammer. That's just to bend it back enough to get it to where it should be. But it worked out well. That's what you find with cars. It's not always how it should be, but you just got to fix it and keep going. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you learned something from it, maybe somebody can use that and then help you out. And that car will be back shortly. You do front brakes on it, so that'll be another video. You get to see that. Thanks.